is ECP monitoring, or generally speaking, ECP monitoring. So monitoring possibilities are described in the ECP administration guide and EDX administration guide. You can use either JMX interface or How-Tile interface. Configuration of the How-Tile interface is described in the administration guide in the chapter How to Enable How-Tile Console. Or maybe we can quickly take a look to this chapter. So How-Tile. And by default, the How-Tile console is not installed on the ECP components. However, you can deploy it very easily. You will just download the How-Tile var file from repository, and you will put it to Tomcat folder where deployments are located. So this is how to enable the How-Tile. The How-Tile console basically provides you some extended information about Java virtual machines and its processes. And about the application processes. When you want to use also How-Tile console for checking the queues, which is recommended, you also need to enable JMX interface. Okay, how to enable JMX? Yeah. In the main configuration file, which means in the ECP properties or EDX properties, you need to enable this spring.jmx enabled and set it to true to have availability to information about the queues. I'll quickly show you the configuration example. Maybe I'll open it in the document editor. So as you can see, there is JMX interface enabled. Therefore, we will have some additional information provided in the How-Tile console regarding the JMX configuration. There's a possibility to enable also the, let's say, JMX API for monitoring using, for instance, Nagios software. In that case, you need also to configure JMX remote properties. I'll just quickly show you how it looks like. In our case, this interface is disabled because we will demonstrate only monitoring via the How-Tile console. However, if your monitoring software needs to connect directly to JMX console and not to use the REST API or Prometheus metrics, which will be described later, then you need to enable the JMX interface by setting this to true. You will configure the ports for the JMX. You will configure the permissions in this password and the access file. And you can also secure this connection using your SSL file. But again, this is described in the administration guide, so I will not go to deeper detail on this. Let's take a look on the How-Tile console, how it looks like and what information can be gathered from the console. So How-Tile console is deployed on the path /How-Tile. by default, this this console is without authentication. However, you can also set up authentication using the credentials if needed. So I think the most useful use case in this Untitled console is monitoring of the queues. So in the tab ActiveMQ, you can see information about all queues, about queue size, about number of consumers, or count of the messages which was executed, and so on. So this information is very helpful for some troubleshooting. If, for instance, some XP component stuck and you don't know if there is some issue on the queues, then the first place you should go to is this Untitled console. Next thing I want to introduce you is the JMX tab, which provides monitoring operations for the ECP endpoint. There is a folder, endpoint monitoring, which contains application monitoring metrics. It is divided into two groups. First is the component directory metrics, which contains information about, let's say, the ECP application itself. So you can, for instance, check the certificate expiration. You can do it easily by clicking this operation. And if you click on this execute button, you will get the result. So you can see that in this case, the certificate expiration returned false because certificates did not expire. You can use also the REST API for the monitoring when your ECP or EDX components contains the Untitled console, and you can invoke these commands using this REST API URL. So if I will copy this one and paste it, to the what is it? Copy. What's not working? Copy. Let's try another use case. Maybe it is web browser issue. Okay, I will try to copy it manually. In the Google Chrome, this is working properly, so it seems that this is the issue with this Firefox web browser. But if I will copy this REST URL, then I will get the response in the JSON format. So, for instance, this check is about checking the certificate status, and you can see that the returned value is true. Similarly for the other checks, like get the closest expiration will return some date. Okay, this is in the days, so the certificate will expire in 363 days. Okay, and I copy this one, put it to the web browser. You can see the same value, 363. So this is one option or one alternative which can be used to the JMX API. You can simply invoke this REST API operations. In this component directory metrics, there is metrics about, as I said, the certificate expiration. Also, the status of the endpoint can be checked if it is active. You can check for number of invalid message paths, check the synchronization status with the component directory. And newly, there is also a metric for checking status of jobs of the ECP endpoint. If I will open it, it has an argument which is for name of the job. So I will quickly open the ECP endpoint, and I will show you the jobs. So jobs are there, and for instance, I'm interested in the synchronization job, so I will copy the value. I'll put it to this job name. I will execute it, and you can see the number 1 was returned, which basically means that synchronization is working fine. Okay, so this is the new one. And I think that's pretty much all.
Yeah, we got also 2 questions from Bastian. First one is if we can explain the meaning of the queues. So we can go through that.
Okay. Okay, I will quickly complete this monitoring matrix, and then we can go to the meaning of the queues. So the second monitoring matrix is about messaging. So this is more connected with the actual messaging features. So you can see that you can check, for instance, number of sent messages, or the messages which are waiting to be delivered, or waiting to be received by your endpoint. Or you can check if you are connected to the broker. So get connected brokers. You can see there is account 1. In our case, we have 1 ECP broker, so the number 1 is fine for us. And then, for instance, if the endpoint is reloading, which should be false. Okay, yeah. So this is more about the messaging metrics. Again, useful for monitoring. Now, back to the queues. Let's open documentation for this one. So let's show the screen. So basically, I was not prepared for it, but I have one presentation which can be used for it. So these queues are available on the ECP endpoint. Active MQ is for expired messages, where the message expiration time was reached. By default, the expiration of the messages is 14 days. The archive queue is for messages which should be archived by some archive handler. Download, ECP endpoint download is for all received messages from other components. ECP endpoint receive handler are messages which were received via the receive handler component. Same for the send, when we are sending messages via receive handler. EDX endpoint inbox is for incoming messages to business application. Internal outbox is for outgoing internal messages. Outbox reply is for messages from MQP API, where the correlation ID was filled in by business application, then the acknowledgement is returned to this reply queue. Send event is for MQP send handler API. For instance, this queue is used for communication between ECP endpoint and EDX toolbox when the status of the messages is changed. And the last one is the ECP endpoint upload, which is for outgoing messages to ECP broker. So I'm not sure if this is sufficient for you, Boštjan.
Yeah, it's rather a little bit sometimes confusing when you see these queues all there and you would wonder what is the actual.
Yeah, but I think you don't really need to stress about it. Like all should be empty. When there are some messages in the queue and the queue is not moving, then something is wrong. So you can easily monitor all these queues. Of course, the LQ don't needs to be monitored. It is not created there because no message was expired. But basically, you can see that all these messages are empty. So I don't think you need to know the exact reason, because this is more about some internal processing of the messages. The main is that the queue should be empty. Or when we are speaking about the monitoring, of course, when you are integrating with your ECP endpoint or EDX toolbox via the MQP API, then you probably will need to know the name of the queue which is used for the integration with your application, and the same for the inner box and the out box. But otherwise, you don't really need to care about what is the meaning of this queue. And also this reply queue is good, like to monitor it when you are sending the messages via the MQP and using the correlation ID to get acknowledgement there. Okay, so this is about.
Yeah. So Miguel raised his hand.
Yeah.
So if you have any question, go on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Before the summer, we experienced some problems with the queues, and our queues were completely full of data, and even HowTO was not able to communicate with the NQP queues. So we would like to know how to empty the queues if we detect that the queues are full of data.
I see. It depends which database you are using. Like you can either delete the messages directly from some external database, like I don't know, MySQL or Oracle. There are tables which are dedicated for the ActiveMQ for the internal broker, or if you are using embedded database, the Apache Derby, then you can simply delete the folder where the internal messages are stored. So I can quickly show you where it is. It should be in the data folder, DB. Okay, we are not using the internal database there, we are using the external, right? So it's not there, but otherwise it would be in this data folder, and there is folder like internal broker or something like this, and when this folder holds all the messages in the queue in case that you are using the embedded database. Yeah, but
is it possible to have some documentation about if you use some external database? What are the tables that we need to, let me say, modify to make CRUD operations create in order to empty the queues?
Good point. I don't know if something like this is already part of the documentation, or if it is on some backlog, like to have some troubleshooting guide from ENTSO-E.
I'm not really sure, but you can still raise the issue on ENTSO-E and ask them if they want to create something like that.
Like Like,
Okay.
yeah, it's like always the question is why it was stuck. So it is good to analyze the logs, to firstly maybe find the root cause, to avoid it in the future. I don't know, like on which project this issue happened. If you have a support of the ECP maintenance team there, then it is good to ask for help, like provide the log file, and like it is case from the case. Like sometimes some simple operation will fix the issue, and it is not needed to delete the database. Like it is not really very common to drop all the database because of some stuck data. Like, okay, if you have outage like for several days or weeks and traffic is heavy, and then you will start the endpoint, yeah, then it could happen that you can reach some limit and some queue can be full, but otherwise it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. But if you want to have this kind of like troubleshooting in some guides, then it is, as mentioned, it is good to maybe ask ENTSO-E if something like this can be added to, for instance, administration guide, like some guide to how to empty the database. Or maybe in my what I'm wondering is like if we will trigger registration of the ECP endpoint, will the queues be deleted?
I'm not really sure, honestly, but as Bogdan mentioned, you can also use JConsole to empty the queues, or how to like push the queue. But the re-registration, not really sure.
Okay.
In any case, what is very important according to that is if we need to perform some queries on the database in order to modify the data, to delete some registries, and we would like to know what is the impact on the historical data if we need to let me say, to restore the queues. What is the impact on the historical data that we are not having access from now on? Is very important for that because you can go to, let me say, to some a normal situation of the system, but it's critical to know that you are not going to be able to access to the data that you have already deleted, and which can what are the data that you are not going to have access from now on. This kind of things it's very important for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. As I mentioned, before deleting any data, it is better to contact support if there is a possibility to verify like what happened and how to fix it. Or the easiest way, if you don't care about the data, the easiest way is just to reinstall or install to the endpoint. Just uninstall and install it again. Send the new registration request to component directory. Wait for the approval and then start with the clean database. Like this is the fastest way how to resolve the issue if you don't want to delete anything from the database. So.
Okay, the documentation about the external database, I understand that it is available on the main documentation, and it is possible to, in order to configure and to use an external database, there is some specific chapter in the documentation related to that.
Yes, it is described in the ECP and in the ECP installation guide. There is also a chapter which is focused on the databases. So I think it's something in the end. External databases, chapter 13.
Okay.
Okay, and there is described how to configure it, what parameters are needed, and so on. So if you want to use the external database, it's described there.
Okay. So if we want to use Oracle, it's possible to configure using this walkthrough.
Sorry, can you repeat?
If we want to use Oracle as external database, we can use
Yes, yeah, definitely.
this chapter to configure. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. You can use this chapter. There are always this a bit out of the scope, but there's always the chapter for the installation of the component for installation in high availability mode, which means the external database is used. So for instance, in the ECP Endpoint installation, there is some standard installation, and then there is information about, where is it? There's chapter installation in high availability mode, and there's described what exactly needs to be configured. The high availability means that you are using the external database, so it is described there, and then the details about the selected database are in the chapter 13 as displayed. So all the needed information are provided there, the ECP and EDX installation guide.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, we are. Do we have any other questions?
There's question regarding REST requests, if they are changed with the upgrades.
On the REST API?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Like there could be, of course, new checks, but there is no need to like change anything in the REST API. Like
It's probably still the same, just adding new one.
Yeah. There shouldn't be any changes. Okay, if this is all, I will just quickly open the How-Tile console into EDX toolbox just to show you that the same is available also for the EDX toolbox. How-Tile, if you will install the How-Tile console, of course, and again you can see some active MQ queues, and you can check the status by using the operations. Also some metrics which are new for this version of the EDX toolbox for 1.10. So you can check if the background shows on the EDX toolbox. These are the only available monitoring metrics when we are talking about monitoring check on the EDX toolbox. Okay, so this is the console. Let's go back to the presentation. Okay, and this one. Okay, we're there. So we have covered this How-Tile and the JMX. And the last thing which is related with the JMX is the definition of the checks. For the JMX, for the CGM program, we have an Excel sheet which contains the information about the monitoring. So there is the bundle, which contains the Nagios libraries and some documentation for the Nagios monitoring. And in this client sheet describes some recommended monitoring metrics. This is the audit log. Where is it? Okay, so you can see, as you can see, the Excel sheet contains information about all components, together with the related checks divided into groups, like some recommendation for hardware sources monitoring, application checks like service status or heap dump memory creation, and then there are the JMX checks, which are basically the same with the checks which were demonstrated in the how tile console. So there are the checks with some recommendation how to configure it, but of course it always depends on the traffics and on the monitoring requirements. In the Nagios implementation tab, there are some details like how the checks should look like how to implement it in the Nagios, and what the configuration should be info for this. But these are like details for the Nagios administrators. So this is just to let you know that something like Nagios recommended checks and together with the provided libraries exists for the CGM program, for the ECP Endpoint, EDX toolbox, and also for other components which are related to the CGM program. Okay. Now let's move on the Prometheus and Grafana metrics. Both ECP Endpoint and EDX toolbox provides possibility to monitor application and resources via the Prometheus metrics. In the spring release, new metrics were added for the background jobs, so you can monitor the success of the job, where the job started and where the job ended. And the information about configuration of the Prometheus is described in the chapter 8.5, Prometheus monitoring in the ECP endpoint or for the ECP components, and into chapter 14, how to enable the Prometheus metrics for the EDX administration guide. You can quickly take a look on the guide before the demonstration. So okay, in the chapter 8.5, it's mentioned that for the Prometheus monitoring, you need to use this property, management endpoint web exposure include, together with endpoints.prometheus.sensitive to false, in order to expose the Prometheus metrics on your ECP endpoint or EDX toolbox. Then the metrics is available on the URL /actuator/Prometheus. I will show you quickly the configuration of the ECP endpoint, just to have example how the configuration should look like. So in the ECP properties, you can see these two parameters were added to enable the Prometheus metrics. By default, the Prometheus metrics is disabled. Okay, we can maybe try to access the Prometheus metrics on some endpoint. Like this. You can see that when you will modify the URL and you will add this query for Prometheus, then you have all the metrics connected with the Java virtual machine process and with the application check available in the single page. So, for instance, you can check, I don't know, brokers, like if your endpoint is connected to the brokers and so on. All the metrics which was described in the how tile, all the application metrics is also available via this Prometheus metrics. Okay, and now I think it is time to demonstration of the Prometheus monitoring. So for our testing environment, we have Prometheus in Docker. The important part in the Prometheus is the targets, which contain information about all monitored endpoints. So you can see that we are monitoring there several endpoints and also toolboxes. You can see the status, and then you can see the date of the last, let's say, synchronization with the last scrape. In this environment, it is configured to do every five minutes. However, in default, it is, I think, every 15 seconds. You can also go directly to the Prometheus metrics by clicking this link. Okay, I first need to log in. And then I need to invoke it again. Okay, yeah, you can see the same. This is basically the same which was introduced before. So back to the Prometheus. Prometheus is gathering all the monitoring metrics. All the monitoring metrics from the ECP Endpoint and EDX toolbox. Regarding its configuration, it is done in this configuration menu, and the important parameters are, okay, let's say to the endpoint configuration. So there is some name of the job. Then the important is the path to the metrics. So you can see that you need to define that the metrics is available on this path, module aggregator /Prometheus. Then you can use some authentication if it is enabled. And then, of course, you need to define the targets where you want to monitor. In our case, the ECP endpoint is listening on the port 20.223, which is like configuration for the Docker instance. So these are the important parameters, and then you can also define how often the monitoring the Prometheus should download the metrics from the endpoint. So you can see that in this case it is every 5 minutes. Prometheus is a monitoring tool which can be used also for visualization of the gathered data. However, we prefer to use Grafana for visualization of the monitoring because it is there's a better user experience. And it is also focused only on these graphs and data from Prometheus. So let's take a look how the data could look like. So in the Grafana, there is part dashboards, browse, okay, webinar, and you can see we have 3 endpoints on our environment, and you can see some information about the metrics. For instance, how many messages was received, how many messages was sent, number of not connected brokers, number of connected brokers, and some details like waiting messages for archivation and so on. These are all the metrics which are available in the messaging, as it was shown in the how type console. Then there is some information about ECP network, like if you have valid message pass, whether the synchronization status is okay, information about certificates, and it is also a possibility to have some information about availability of the services. So you can see that there are graphs about overall availability for all the components. And of course, you can configure also the notifications for the services, which is done via these alerting rules. And then you can define for which components should be used monitoring notification. So for in this case, it is for ECP endpoint availability, and if okay, there was one alerting. I can see that when the endpoint was restarted, that the notification was sent. So Grafana is used for visualization of the rules in the dashboards and for defining rules to which channels and on which monitoring checks should be notifications being sent. I can show you also some extended monitoring where also hardware is monitored. So it is on a different environment. Again, browse dashboard, metrics, and okay, the last, let's say, okay. There are also some extended possibilities, like to monitor each queue, status of each queue. This was already covered. This is about network connection, but you can also monitor, of course, the metrics of the server. If you are using some exporter for your virtual machine or for your Docker container, you can also monitor the metrics. So you can see CPU usage, memory usage, disk space, and so on, network traffic. So very useful metrics. Okay, so this is about the Grafana. Now let's move back to the presentation. I think that's all for this monitoring part. Are there any questions connected with the monitoring? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, there's a question from Bostian. Combination of which ECP/EDX monitors reflects component messaging capability?
Okay. So, okay, then I will go back to the Grafana. Just to visualize. For instance, this number of connected broker and not connected brokers, when we know that we have one broker, which is a central component for messaging, and this broker is disconnected, so number of connected broker is 0 and number of not connected broker is 1, then definitely something is wrong. The same is for the component directory, so you can monitor the status of the connection to your component directory, so the synchronization status. And of course, you can use also the monitoring of the queues. So for instance, on this one, the queues should be empty. In this case, there's some issue on the endpoint, so you can see that some messages are waiting in the queue. So definitely you can monitor also this one. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all. You can also use the connectivity test to other components, which is available via the web service API. However, this is not visualized in this case, so it is not available there. But it is possibility to call the connectivity test via the web service API, and you can use this result of the connectivity test for the monitoring purposes to see whether you are able to reach the receiver side or not.
Any other questions?
Okay.